Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Just a Recording podcast, where we have conversations with individuals that think differently and challenge the status quo with success and valuable lessons. This week's episode is with a special friend, and I am really excited to bring you this episode. But before I do, I want to talk to you a little bit about a sponsor that we have. This week's sponsor is called The Root Brand, and they take power from the roots, plants, seeds, and vegetables, and they've turned out two incredibly great products that I am currently taking. The first product I'm going to tell you about is Root Zero In, which is basically gives you laser sharp focus and helps with the brain fog. What it is it's a natural brain and mood enhancement, and it's an alternative to chemicals and meds. You don't need coffee. You don't need any other pills or any other caffeine. There's no crash. I got a great night's sleep, and I am just on fire throughout my days. The next product I'm going to tell you about is Clean Slate, which is basically a detoxifying mineral. It's a safe, simple, systemic detoxification for your mind, body, and spirit, and basically detoxifies your body of metals, which allows your temple to just operate more efficiently. This product has been incredible. Again, it's therootbrand.com, and basically what they've created is all organic, vegan, gluten-free, non-GMO products that are just insane. The other crazy thing about this product is you need to get through the velvet rope in order to get it. And I am giving you the opportunity to go ahead and order this product by using the code GRATITUDE. Yep, gratitude. Go to therootbrand.com and use the code GRATITUDE, and you can get access to these two products. You will not be disappointed. I guarantee it. Without being said, I want to go ahead and get into this week's episode, so I am really excited to get into it. What I want to tell you is the audio is a little bit muffled in the first 45 minutes. This was something that I recorded prior to me getting some new equipment. This episode was actually the reason I got this new piece of equipment, was so I wouldn't have any more issues with my mics. So I apologize about that, but let's go ahead and get into it, fam. Peace. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Just a Recording Podcast. I am your host, Patrick. Thank you very much for joining us this week. We have a really good episode to hit you with. It is with somebody that I have spent an immense amount of time with in the last, it's been over a year now. And so I've known this person throughout the course of time for a very long length of time, but we went probably about 15 plus years without seeing one another, and oddly bumped into each other in some random Orange County airport. And so now we are an immense part of one another's lives. We impact each other tremendously, not only personally but business. And this person has just become my person, and I thought it would be good to sit down and shoot the shit and do all the things. So say hello, Candice.
Hi. That was a really sweet intro.
Was it?
Yeah, it was. Thank you for saying all those things.
Yeah.
Same.
Just make sure you talk in your microphone so everyone hears you.
Same.
You might be. Is it too close to your?
No,
Is it?
No, that's fine.
That's good.
That's perfect.
Perfect. So let's dive in a little bit of how we used to know one another way back.
Way back. So way back is 15 years ago, 2004.
Yeah.
You dated my best friend at the time, and you came out of nowhere and took up all her time. And I was slightly salty. I was like, who's this big redheaded gingery 6'4" person that's taking up all your time. And I think I nicknamed you my arch nemesis because best friend versus boyfriend at the time. And then you guys whisked off and moved to Florida, and I think that's kind of where it started, just from me being introduced to you. And because you were dating my best friend, I had a lot of exposure to you, so I was around you a lot. I got to know your family, I got to know like you as a person, like through her. But then there was such a long lapse of time, because once you guys ended up moving to Florida, life happens. I say things get lifey. So like they got real lifey, and her and I both were hairstylists. We had gone to hair school together. We had become best friends in hair school. And then just like that.
You guys were inseparable.
We were inseparable. We did everything together.
Yeah.
So I mean, you saw me often.
Often.
And
we were like oil and water.
We were like oil and water, boy. I was like, ugh, I just want to come over here, and you're not here, but you're always here because you live here. So I think once you guys ended up moving to Florida, her and I kind of just lost touch with one another, because I'm sure moving to a whole nother state, trying to get her career off the ground. And of course I knew you through her, so if her and I lost touch, of course, like I wouldn't talk to you. Mm-hmm. So it was really interesting when I got off the plane. 15 years later, I'm in California. I was at the John Wayne Airport getting off from a tremendous year. Like 2018 had just kind of exploded. And then here I am in January of 2019. And I was invited to go to California to have like a retreat for trainers. I had just been inducted into a company, BMS, Natural Beaded Rows, and that was like their first train the trainer, plan your life, get a handle on your life, and we want to invite you to come into our training mode with the entire company. And I was like, shit, of course I'm going to that. I'm such a planner. I love to put things on paper. I have like vision boards and all the shit. So of course I went. And then when I'm getting off the plane, I'm just thinking about like my whole 2018. That's what's been on my mind because it just exploded. And then I get off the plane, and of course, like, you see somebody that you haven't seen in 15 years, so it's nostalgic. It's kind of like, do I know that person? And I got off the plane, and I was waiting for my luggage because they had taken it. It was a carry-on. They were like, hey, let's put it in here. So I was kind of like lingering, like,
you didn't know where your luggage was going to be.
I didn't know where. I didn't know it was going to be at the carousel. Like, I've never had that situation where I'm like about to load on the words are hard. I was about to load onto the plane, and she was like, "Yeah, we're going to just take that. We'll tag it." I'm like, "Okay." Wait, where is that going? So I was just kind of like waiting, and then that's when I saw you, being you, leaning up against something, talking about your seat. Like, I was like, damn, he looks so familiar. Where do I know him from? Shit. Couldn't place it. And then I heard your voice. And you have a very distinct voice. So I was like, that is Patrick motherfucking Moen, arch nemesis, 2004. Spotted in the airport. And I don't think you knew who I was at all.
It took me...
so different.
Yeah, I think we both look very different. I mean, I'm like just a older version of what I probably look like, and I have a beard now.
Yeah. Beard swag is real strong.
Appreciate that.
Yes.
It took me a minute because you were like, "Is your name Patrick?" Mm-hmm. And I think you followed it up with, "Do you remember me?" And I was like,
boy,
the Rolodex was spinning
like,
in my head.
Have I? Did we?
Yeah.
Are you?
Yeah.
I'm like, nope.
Bumble, Tinder.
No, I'm like, no, that ain't it. And then you got it.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is that I always, when we tell this story, I've never had to go to like the counter before I fly to chat about why I didn't have a seat. Mm-hmm. I had gotten upgraded, they lost my seat, and I was in the Starbucks line. I walked over there while they were making my coffee because I got a notification that I didn't have a seat, and that's never happened to me before.
It's never happened to me where I was on a plane either.
Right.
You take a bag so that you don't have to wait, you know? So it's never happened where they took my checked bag. And I'm like, where are you taking that? For me to even have to linger at the gate once I landed in California.
So I probably, if I didn't have to go to the counter, I would have ordered my coffee, sat down, and
would have never seen you.
Would have never seen me.
If they never checked my bag and I wasn't lingering, never seen you either. So weird.
Yeah.
Universe type shit.
Yeah. And then we started talking. We talked for like almost an hour. I almost missed my flight.
Yeah.
They threw away my coffee because I never went back to get it.
It was worth it.
We talked for like 45 minutes, and then we just exchanged
IGs.
Instagram. And then I got on my plane to fly to where you just came from, which was Raleigh, because I was coming to see my nieces for their birthday. And so it was, I was living in Costa Mesa at the time.
I think one important thing to say inside of the reason why we talked for so damn long in the airport, your 2018 had just exploded as well. So getting ready for my training, I think my wheels were just kind of turning about why did all the things happen that did happen in 2018, and then what I was really wanting for my 2019. So I was in a state of like just openness. I'm looking for signs. I'm like, what is this going to look like? Where is it going to be? Why did all these things happen? Like, that's my mindset when I got off the plane. So I think because I was already thinking about that, and then I ran into someone who knew me from way back when, conversation just exploded. And then from there, it's just been touch points ever since, like through all the things that happened inside of my 2019, inside of your 2019. I think it was really sweet that you said I'm your person. I feel the same way about you, and we've just been able to connect so many different ways so often that like I really do feel like the meeting was destined to happen. Like the universe was like, perfect, right? Perfect. And and then walked away and just let it happen.
And then 2 months later I moved, or 3 months later I moved back to Raleigh.
Back to Raleigh.
Which is where you live.
Which is where I live. And now you're sitting on my couch.
Yeah.
With your podcast equipment, recording this, which is also crazy.
Yeah. So, let's talk a little bit about BMS, because I think that you were talking to me intermittently through the time. I think you called me after you had talked with Garrett and Danielle, and was like, you were obviously getting inducted into this new program that they were creating, and like you were the girl, and you were one of 5 or 6. It was 6 at the time.
I was one of 4.
One of 4. And so that kind of really blossomed in the beginning of 2019, and now you were like in the thick of everything that you manifested in 2019, of just what you wanted to do, how you wanted to show up, like numbers, income, like people, impact, changing bitches' lives.
I love it.
And so let's talk a little bit about that. So MBR, or DKW and MBR.
Let me I'll take
BMS,
it from here. I'll take it from here.
DKR, MBR, ABC.
1, 2, 3. So backstory is I've been doing hair for 19 years this year. And for the first 10 years of my career, it was very cut, color, highlight, traditional salon space. I worked in a mall. And I worked for a company named Mitchell's. And I was just trying to get my bearings. And once I got my bearings, I got really comfortable, and it was good. I was doing hair and loving it. And then something kind of sparked where I hit the top of their ceiling. And after 10 years, I was one of their top stylists, and they were training me to become like a manager for their salon. They had like 15 salons, and I just didn't know anything different because I had gone to their school. Your ex and I had gone to their school. So fast forward, after that 10-year stint of being there, I just caught a bug of like, I don't think it was entrepreneurship yet, but I felt like I wanted more, just instantaneously. There wasn't like a magic number. I didn't have a special birthday. I just kind of was looking around like, can I really see myself here for like another 10 years doing the same thing? And I just started to think about what could happen, what else is out there. And that's where it started to grow. And I ended up leaving that salon and I went to work at, that was a commissionable space. So I worked for their company and I got a paycheck from their company. The salon that I found was a hybrid salon where she offered commission, so I can roll into that. Or I could booth rent. And for a hairstylist, that's a really big deal. You go from getting a paycheck from someone to just paying a weekly booth rent, and you get to keep everything. So I'd done that for a couple of years and was doing really well with it. And I've always loved extensions, and I always thought that they were kind of magical. I'm like, God, you can really change the way someone looks instantly. And then I started to see the look was just secondary to like the feeling that was omitted by the person. And I was like, holy shit, this is big. But in my area, in Raleigh, I mean, Raleigh kind of gets shit last. We're on the East Coast. Like when it comes to like big, beautiful, amazing shit in the beauty industry, I don't feel like Raleigh's like the hub. So I was trying to make it work. I was going to educational events and doing different things. And then I ended up getting into coaching, and it just expanded my mind even more. And then fast forward a little bit, I went from working inside of that studio, that salon, that hybrid space. She ended up closing it, and it forced me into my own studio. And from there, I really got a taste of entrepreneurship. Then it was fucking over. As soon as I smelled it, as soon as I tasted it, I was like, that's for me. And then from there, I opened up Garnish Extension Studio. And I'm a firm believer of like putting it out there. I like to write shit down. And I was like, I want the name of my business to be not exactly what it was at the time, but what I aspired for it to become. So I did extensions, but I didn't really like slay extensions. I did them, but it definitely wasn't that kind of salon.
It was a normal salon when you first opened it.
Yep,
like,
traditional
you just had
salon.
a bunch of girls cutting hair, coloring.
But we did do extensions because I had done them for a long time, but it was very spotty, kind of hit or miss. I would do some every once in a while. And then I found out about DKW, which is Danielle K. White, who's my mentor. She owns a salon called the DKW Salon in Laguna Beach, California. And I flew out there for training. And it was the new extension method on the block. It had just became really hot, and I really, I'm very intrigued by them. So here I am, still spinning my wheels, trying to make it a thing. And I went out there, and I was introduced to not only her team, but her husband, Garrett, who's a very big part of, or at the time was a very big part of her training. She trained on extensions, and he trained on business. And the two of them together are fire. So when I went out there, I just wasn't expecting all of that. I really thought I was flying to Laguna to like learn about extensions and this particular type, which is hand-tied. They're wefts, they're different, they're light, they're safe, they're easy, they're sexy, they look beautiful. I was like, oh, I need to know about these. So flew out there, my cap was blown back. Like I came back home 2 days later, like completely different vision, saw something tremendous. And it was like, have you ever been so antsy when you just figure something out and you're like, it almost gives you anxiety because you're so excited about it? That's how I felt. And then since then, I've flown back out to California several times. They could not throw rocks at me to keep me away from Laguna Beach. Everything they told me to do, I did it. They told me to jump, I said how high. They told me that this would work, I believed. Like, I just have been so devoted to that company because every single time I came back, something amazing happened, which is why my 2018 exploded, because I went out there about 3.5 years ago. So after about a year of their trainings and their methodology, they really have paired business and marketing and sales and amazing shit that hairstylists and other like creative minds don't really generally invest in. We're artists.
Yeah. So there's one thing that came to mind that I want to make sure that, because you didn't mention this, you went to the CEO, like the founder of Mitchell's, when you were working, and you presented to him kind of like a business plan of like, hey, I think extensions are the next thing. Like, I think that we could really make an impact.
I said those exact words.
And how did he respond to you?
So he responded with like a coy kind of, listen, baby girl, sweet girl. I mean, I know you just came back from this class. I know you're super excited, but I'm gonna let you know, I mean, you're in Cary, North Carolina. Extensions are expensive. Basically, you work in the mall. Like, and I was at his salon, and he didn't say no, but he was very smug about it not working. But he didn't say it in those words. It was just like this.
Nobody in Raleigh is gonna want extensions.
Yeah, I mean, pat me on my head and kind of like patted me on my head and like sent me out of the office. He said I could definitely like try it. You can bring your stuff and you can talk to your clients about it. So, I mean, if you want to invest in it, go for it. But I just don't think that's something that's going to play out. I'm like, okay. And I really left that office like super fucking deflated. Like super deflated because I was so excited about it. And this wasn't paired with like business training. This was my very first extension training. So like I didn't know anything about anything. I just knew that it seemed exciting. And when I went to fly out to California back then, it was really new, like super new. So when he said that it just wouldn't work in so many words, I didn't think I was the person that was like, oh, I'll show you. I mean, I didn't feel like that. I really just felt deflated. So then that's when I started to talk to my clients about it, experiment, really like fail forward. Like I was trying stuff. I'm like, well, she needed more hair in that set. Not really super blended, but you know, and just trying different things. So to even think back to that time where I first started and somebody kind of looking at my dream saying, nah. Now I own Garnish Extension Studio, the #1 East Coast place for extensions to be done, and like we have a tremendous team and a following and a culture. Like that's all my salon does. Like I transitioned it in the explosion of 2018 and we went from full service traditional salon into exclusively offering services wrapped around extension guests. So we still do the traditional services, but every single client that comes in now, we are 100% extension based. So the juxtaposition between baby girl into damn, that time span was probably, I'd say about 10 years, 12 years, but we're here.
So let's talk a little bit about extensions, because I think a lot of people might not understand why women get extensions. They don't know that probably every celebrity or every influencer or every woman that is in the public eye in one way, shape, or form, if not has them, has had them, probably more so than not. But there's also women that need extensions because they've had an illness, a disease, something has impacted their life where they're bald or they're going bald or they're losing their hair, and it gives them like a self of identity back again, what it is that you do. So talk a little bit about what they are, because a lot of people have no clue what extensions are and the actual, not only, it's not like a clip-in.
I mean, extensions are additions that you add into your hair. You can add them for length, fullness, volume, coverage. You can add more hair for a slew of different reasons. The reasons that generally resonate with my guests that bring them into Garnish, women want to feel a certain way and they want to look a certain way, but that look equates to a feeling. So when you add extensions in, if you're creating a lot of length, it's a complete 180 from the way that the person looks, and it can be very extreme. Or you can have the woman that's like, gosh, my hormones are just playing a toll, like I just had a baby, which is what happened to me. After I had my son, my hair was coming out like in droves, and I'm like, this has never been an issue for me. I've always had super thick, curly, like dense hair, but you just don't know how it's going to affect you until it's you. So you can add them for a number of reasons, but it's human hair, the ones that we use in the studio, and there's a lot of different ways to install it or put it in. You can tape them in, bond them in, sew them in, all the ways to put them in, but they're in. And then once they're in, they have maintenance attached to them, so you come back into the studio, how many times, it depends on the method, but it's just like anything else that you would add into like your routine, like your maintenance for like beauty regimen. At this point, we don't really service men. That's a completely different like hair loss. Well, I lie, Reese. So the one boy that works in my studio, my sweet boy, he's got extensions, but his are for length. He's got Fabio hair. But yes, a lot of women will seek us out because there's a problem they're trying to fulfill. And a lot of women just know, like, damn, her hair looks great, like a celebrity. And they're like, let me do some research. Boom. Extensions.
Right. Interesting. So you briefly mentioned, you are a mom. You have two beautiful kids.
Thank you.
I think the insane aspect of not only how you show up as a parent is that you opened up Garnish while you were pregnant with Kingston.
Yeah.
And so you were venturing into entrepreneurship, which you were taking a deep dive. You kind of ventured into it when you rented your booth. When you had like your space in that one salon, you were just renting your space, but you like really went head first and opened up a brick and mortar salon.
Yes.
And you were pregnant with Kingston.
I was.
And you were dating Dustin at the time.
Their daddy.
And so talk a little bit about the trials and tribulations of that, and now looking back how it's played out.
So I had just turned 30, and I was still, there was an in-between. So from the hybrid salon to my brick and mortar space with Garnish, there was a little suite that I had. That's really where Garnish was born. I was there for a couple of years. So I was like a, what do I call it? A solopreneur. So I was a solopreneur there. I had one person like helping me, like assisting me, but he didn't do hair. He was like my ace. We were holding it down in that little studio. And I went away for my 30th birthday. I went to Miami, came back. I was like, man, I feel weird. Maybe I did something, I don't know, like what's going on? Pregnant. Extra pregnant. Found out we were pregnant, let Dustin know. We were dating for maybe not even a year when we found out. And I was already in the throes because my studio at the time was doing super well. So I was already looking for spaces. I had found a space. I was working with a broker at the time, and like it was already underway. And when I found out that we were pregnant with Kingston, I was pretty far along. I was like 3 months along. I was like, how the hell did I not know? So
there was no, and I want to be careful about how I say this. I don't want to say, there was no like, if you would have found out earlier, you said it was super early in your relationship, would there have been a thought of like, do we want to bring a child into this relationship? Did that ever come up, or was it like?
I'm sure. I'm sure that the thought would have,
because of the timing,
come,
right.
But I think the thought would have been squashed because of the perception of myself turning 30. Like my 20s, fun, frivolous, traveling, dating, doing whatever. 30s, I had really tapped into adulting. And I'd been living on my own for a while, but I was finally living in a place that I like loved. I had my own like condo, and I was finally making a good income, like it was steady, and my studio was doing well. I just bought myself like my dream car at the time. It was a Cadillac SX. I can't remember. It was sexy. I can't remember. I have a mom car now, so I don't remember.
You don't have a mom car.
That's a mom car.
His name is Big Rome, and it's on 22s. That is not a mom car.
Okay. I mean,
I helped you pick it out.
You did.
The rims are black. That's not a damn mom car.
Okay, but it's not my sexy two-door Cadillac coupe.
I would drive Big Rome.
You look like you should drive Big Rome.
It's because of my big.
Yeah, the way your big is set up. So I'm sure the thought would have crossed my mind, but the thing inside of my mind at that point was like fulfilling my destiny, doing things that impacted. Like I was comfortable and happy where I was, but I knew I was going to do more. So I think the pregnancy would have fallen into my mindset during that time, and it would have been no, we're doing this. Like, this is what happened. This is what was created. Like, obviously this is meant to be. I kind of fell into this is meant to be. That was kind of the beginning of that, like, manifestation and putting it out there and just taking signs from the universe. I wasn't always like that, but around that point in time, I had started to transition into that, from like coaching and therapy and all the things. So I don't think that it would have been should we? I would have been okay, so this is what it is at that point.
Was Dustin the first guy that you started dating that had been like a long span?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, and you know, we started dating like haphazardly. Help me.
Haphazardly?
Can you help me? Haphazardly?
Haphazardly.
I went through a pretty bad breakup. You can't help me say that word.
I can too.
I went through a pretty bad breakup, and he was like a friend of a friend, and she was like, girl, you are just not getting over this breakup. I was like, ugh. I was so sad. And she was like, I have this friend, and at first I was like, nah. And then I saw him, and I was like, wait, he cute. What's his name? And I didn't really date anyone that lived in Raleigh in my area. I always like dated out of town. I was constantly trying to like travel. I just didn't feel like there was anything in this area back then.
And you were also on a hiatus of dating men.
Yeah. I hadn't dated men for like 10 years.
10 years.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the point I wanted to reference to, is if you think about, you haven't dated men for 10 years. You only dated women.
That's it.
First guy that you date.
Boom.
You get pregnant, and while like you're launching Garnish, like all these thoughts, all these feelings, all these emotions of like, shit.
Everything was different.
Dating a guy. Now I'm growing a human. I'm launching a business, which is like another human that you're trying to raise.
So much change in such a short little tiny bit of time. Introduce therapy. That's why I started going to therapy. I was like, okay, before shit hits the fan, I really think that talking about all the change and just being aware that things are very different, because while you're going through it, it's like you kind of get into fight or flight, like day by day. And then I just started to notice, I was like, okay, I'm doing this, I'm also doing this, I've never dated this, now this is happening. And then speed that up a little bit. I just wanted to remain in control as much as possible. And I feel like even now, being in control of my controllables, like how I show up, what I do, how I react, like removing myself instead of being mad, like all of those things came from like pouring into myself and like self-love and like how I communicate and all of those things. But yes, tons of change. Tons of change. 2014 was the beginning of all the change, from finding out I was pregnant with Kingston to Dustin and I moving in together, and then we moved in with a friend of mine because I knew he worked in a retail location at the time and I did hair, so that instantly like cuts you out of like daycare. I'm like, nobody in this camp is going to be ready to pick up a kid by 6. So I was like, hey girl, are you going back to school? Do you want to move in to watch me baby? She was like, yeah. So I went from living on my own to moving into a home where me, Dustin, and one of my best friends at the time, Andrea, all moved in together while I was pregnant, and I was opening up Garnish at the same time. So I had like a hard hat on, looking at, you know, paint samples and like drilling up the floor, like cutting down like ceiling tiles and HVAC being put in, spending my entire damn life savings, because I just poured into it before I found out I was pregnant. And I remember taking all of that money out and basically handing it over to my contractor. And then I'd say maybe like a month or so later, I found out about Kingston. So just my nerves were a wreck. I was super nervous, very on edge. Along with all the change, there was just like, should I have stayed in my little studio? Like, this is really big, I'm gonna have employees. Like, the anxiety was real. That 2014 was just an anxious blur, a huge blur. 2015 is when Garnish opened, and I started out with 2 employees. I had Kingston. 6 weeks later, 6 weeks later, I go in for my postpartum 6-week checkup. Your
checkup to make sure everything's good after giving birth to Kingston.
And Kingston was a big baby, so like, I just wasn't ready. So I go in and I'm like, okay, this is a big appointment, the 6-week mark, especially when you have like a partner. They're like, 6 weeks. I'm like, 6 weeks, make sure everything's good. And I come home and I'm like, he's like, how did it go? How is everything? Because I called him from the parking lot and he didn't pick up because he was at work. And I was like, and he was like, are you good? I'm like, we're pregnant. And he was like, no, we're not. I'm like, yes, we are. He was like, right now? Like we're pregnant now. And I'm like, we're pregnant right now. Again, for the second time. So I had a 6-week-old, and then I found out I was pregnant with Houston. Let me just take a moment.
God.
It was a lot. So I had a business that was not quite a year old and a 6-week-old, and then I found out I was growing another human. Then I started going to therapy twice a week. One was by phone, and then the other one was like an in-office visit.
Yeah.
Really. So then I ended up having Houston.
Shit.
I had Houston in 2015. And that's when everything does happen for a reason. And I think the universe was just telling me like, bitch, you got it. You have the sauce. Let me show you. Because I would have never chosen to do all of those things. Like, motherhood was never something on my plate. Like, I just never even saw it. Like, I was like, no, I'm good.
Especially after dating women for 10 years.
Well, I mean, you can have children with women.
I know, but I think...
I didn't have a spouse at the time or a partner that I was like, hey, I can really see this happening. I saw myself being successful and traveling and like making an impact, making income, like doing that kind of thing. I never really saw myself being a mom. So to be a mom times 2, just a few years after I went on my first date with like this amazing guy, I'm like, oh boy. So 2015, Houston came. Garnish was a year old. Kingston was a year old. And then I just feel like I kind of put my blinders on a little bit because I had so much responsibility. I was trying to run my business, trying to be a good mom, trying to be a good spouse, trying to be a good friend, business owner, leader, boss. Like, there was just so much that was happening that I really started to, like, my shit started hitting the fan hard, really hard. And everything was going well, but there wasn't really a lot of me time. Because where? Because how? And after a couple of years of that, that's when it started to become very evident that I was starting to like lose myself. My business was doing really well. My kids were doing great. My partner and I were like even, you know, as much as could be expected with like so much change and kids and not having like a long history with one another or like a super strong foundation from that long history.
Yeah.
But I started to feel myself kind of like unraveling slowly. And I'm like, maybe this is just because all this is new. Maybe this is because I've never been a mom before. You know, I've never been a business owner before. Maybe this is something that they go through. It's like if you have a bad reaction to something and you're just trying to think like, what did I eat? If everything that you ate the day before is brand new, you don't know where the hell that is coming from. I kind of felt like that with my life, where I just didn't know where the anxiety and kind of like the sleepless nights and not being able to turn my mind off. I'm like, well, I do have 2 kids under 2 and a business and all these things. So I think I just put it into a box of this is kind of how it's supposed to be. And it was very normal.
Like accepting of it.
Very accepting, because I just didn't think that I hadn't prepared, and I didn't really think that it was supposed to be different. It got lifey. I kept showing up. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, it just really wasn't working anymore.
What aspect?
Every fucking aspect. Everything looked good on the outside. It was very pretty on the outside. Like, my business looked amazing on the outside. My relationship looked amazing on the outside. My kids, amazing. Like, the dynamic in the home with, like, all 3 of us, like, living together. My friend, my partner, my kids. Like, we had 2 dogs. And there was a picket fence there as well, like, in that house in the backyard. So even down to the picket fence, it looked great. I owned a successful salon. We had hit like the $1 million point inside of my studio. Like, the shit was going great, but I just wasn't happy. I just felt like I was constantly on this quest to feel better, and I also wasn't happy with my body. So I was like, that's a big thing. When you have 2 kids back to back, I had gained 50 pounds twice, and your skin just doesn't snap back from that. So I'm like looking at weird ass skin on my stomach. I've always fluctuated in my weight. And just all of that put together, I keep saying this, but I just didn't know that anything was really wrong, because I had never gone through any of those things before in my life, let alone at the same time, within the same year, same 18 months, all that shit happened. So then I started to kind of chip away. I'm like, I need to get my shit back together. I need to finally lose the weight and feel good about myself. So I went on like this fitness journey, this weight loss journey. And I was like, okay, I don't have enough time to go to the gym every day. I have 2 kids. They're young. You know, my partner is like off at work, and then we're like passing shifts in the night. We did all that. I was like, what can I do to like get back on track? So I ordered Beachbody, and I was like, okay, we're gonna T25 this thing all the way home. So I ordered that. I ordered Insanity, like anything that I can do from my living room, I did. And I lost 50 pounds in about 6 to 8 months. Wow. And I was like, yes.
Post-pregnancy, right?
Post-pregnancy of Houston. But it left me with like, I was thin and I was fit, but because I guess I lost it so quickly, when I have my mind set on something, I'm that type of person. I'm like, you go or you go home. You finish it, you finish it. So once I finally lost the weight, I was expecting to feel better and to look better, and like I thought my snapback was gonna be like, my snapback wasn't there. Like, I lost the weight, and my skin looked like you. And I was like,
your skin on your stomach.
Oh, it was terrible. I mean, it was terrible. It looked like elastic. Like I really could like move it around and just like pinch it in ways that you should never be able to pinch skin and have it stay. I'm like, nobody told me about this. Then my hair was coming out. I was like, but I'm in the beauty industry looking in front of a mirror every day, like pretending that I feel okay. So insert extensions, because I'm in the perfect place to put them in. And then I started researching ways to, again, chipping away. I found a surgeon who specialized in like mommy makeovers, and I'm like, okay, I think this is what I need. So I went for a consultation. He said I was a perfect candidate. Lined myself up, did it, moved it out of the way, recovered, everything was there. Like, it was a great, like, I am so happy that I did that for myself. It made me feel instantly better. I just recently posted about that. Because a lot of women have the same, like, I feel really bad, I don't want to, but because I had been unraveling, I'm like, okay, I need to do whatever it takes to keep mama good, because if mama ain't good, this whole ship is going to burn up.
Yeah, I think you said sometimes you had like slight body dysmorphia at times in your life because
way more than slight.
Yeah.
Severe body dysmorphia.
What did that feel like?
It's kind of weird because I think describing body dysmorphia is like trying to describe anxiety. Like, you just can describe like the symptoms, but you can't really describe like the feeling unless you felt it. But so many people have experienced anxiety. They're like, oh, yeah, I have anxiety too. With body dysmorphia, it's not like you're looking in the mirror and you see a different shape. You become obsessive. And you're very like super hypercritical of certain things that you're like looking at them thinking like, if I can just move that, like you start to move it or like push it away, and you start to see something different in the mirror where you're not looking at the whole entire picture, you're looking at one area or like one thing. At least that's how it was for me. So as I was losing weight and shrinking and looking better and like feeling better, and I was healthier and all that great shit was happening, but I was still obsessing over like this one area.
Did you hate the way you looked, or?
Nah. No, I didn't hate the way I looked. I loved my face. I loved my hair because the extensions were in it. Like, that's so weird to say I liked my face, but like, it was really just one area in my body. It was my stomach and midsection and my booty. That's when my booty journey began as well. Like, I started doing squats. I'm like, I'm going to change the way I look. So a lot of those things I could control. The one thing I couldn't control was the thing that kind of set me off into body dysmorphia. And I started to lose so much weight. People were almost getting concerned. They were like, Candice, you're really thin right now. I'm like, yeah, girl, I'm on a fitness journey, you know, and I'm always like put some humor around it. And they're like, well, girl, too much more fitness journey. Your ass ain't going to be here anymore. You're really thin. And then I know when Dustin said something to me, and he's so complimentary, he was so good. He was like, you know, I love you no matter what. You can look any way that you feel like you need to look. I'm going to love you regardless. When he said, I mean, Candice, you are getting really thin. That's what made me stop. I was like, damn, I've never heard him say anything. Like, he's the most supportive, like, I love you big, I love you small, I just love you. So I looked in the mirror and I didn't feel super thin. That's when I knew I had body dysmorphia. I was like, I don't feel like I look extremely thin right now. But then when I would see a picture of myself, I was like, oh my God, my collarbones are sticking out. Yeah. So, I mean, there was never any, for me, anorexia or like bulimia. There was nothing. It was just like working out nonstop. But I kept on looking at this area, and that wasn't going away, but the rest of me was kind of shrinking.
Yeah.
So once I had the surgery, once I had my mommy makeover, I feel like it kind of tapered off. But I think once you kind of have like a obsessive thing, like you can taper it off, but it still might be there in certain forms. But now I don't feel like it's something that I like battle with or think about. I just want to make sure that I am healthy. Like, I transitioned it mentally into, I want to feel a certain way.
Right.
And I want to have my body perform a certain way because I have a lot of shit that I need to do in my life. So I think, again, like going back to just mindset and just making sure that it's rooted in the right area versus just physical, which is where it was before.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because you said that you just posted about it. You just posted a blog post on your website, and the amount of feedback that you got was so insane. Like, just all the women that were thanking you for talking about it. You don't, as a guy, as a man, you don't really know. You just think like everything goes back to normal. You like some women you see like they they get bigger after while they're pregnant, and they lose a little bit of it, but they kind of stay in that manner. And then there's some women that are like, they suck right back into how they were. Sometimes they look even better than what they were before they had the baby. And you never really know what that looks like. I mean, obviously, somebody that's, you know, naked in front of you, that you are able to dissect like every part of their body and go post-baby, pre-baby. As a man, you're never, like, I wasn't brought up, I was raised by a bunch of women, I was never brought up to know, like, shit changes, and it doesn't go back for some people.
Yeah, I was one of those people it just didn't go back for.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's the majority of women that it doesn't, like, just snap back. It's a lot of work.
When all you see is the snapback, because if you think about who would be posting, like who would show it off, rightfully so, someone whose snapback game is strong as fuck. You're like, snapback, 6 months in, six pack, like that's what I saw. It's rare that I saw someone that was like, bitch, my snapback is broken.
Yeah, because people don't like to post about that.
People don't like to post about that, so I think the perception is a little skewed. But then when you're sitting there and you're one of those hoes, it's like, man, my snapback is fucking missing. Where is she?
Yeah.
That makes you do a little bit more research. And then inside of my research, that's when I found, like, okay, I have really extremely dry skin. Like, I wasn't drinking a ton of water. Like, I just think that certain things, it just led me into, okay, I don't have the type of skin that would snap back. And then I also had, like, a very... I'd say like the 2 pregnancies back to back, 6 weeks apart, like that's not normal. So it's not like I had space. So every element was there for it to become what it was.
Perfect. The
perfect storm of, okay, your skin, your pregnancies super close, your diet was kind of all over the place because you're doing all these things. So then we landed there.
Yeah.
But what I was gonna say is, once I had this surgery and I was recovered, like 6 months later, I felt a whole hell of a lot better. And I felt better about this, but then I started, again, chipping away at, okay, I feel better, so much better about myself, but like I still don't feel like I am in alignment with what I'm supposed to be doing or how I'm supposed to feel. At this point, it was like maybe a year or so, 2 years after I had Houston. I'm like, maybe I have postpartum depression, but does that like last for 2 years? I don't feel sad. Like, I just feel kind of in a state of overwhelm, and I was really irritable. Like, especially when I got home. When I was at work, it was better, but then I just felt like I just wasn't myself. So that's what continued to leave an impression on me that I needed to do some more work. And I tried acupuncture. I tried, switching therapists. I tried just a slew of things, changing my diet, all the things that I can think to do, I was trying. And then I started training and coaching with this phenomenal man. His name is Caleb. He is very industry specific, and I found him online because I wanted to start offering coaching in my studio because I'm such a advocate of coaching and therapy, but like coaching specifically inside of your industry changed the game for me. So I wanted to have that for my staff. And I remember reaching out to him, and I was giving him all these things and telling him like why my staff needed coaching because I still had a coach through another company. And he was kind of like, he's younger than me, and he was like, so I'm going to send you over 2 packages, one for your team and then also a private package for you. And I'm like, well, I mean, I already have a coach. He was like, no, I think you should keep that coach. I just think you would get a huge benefit from my style of coaching. So my first original coach was like numbers and putting things on paper, action plans, very traditional coaching maneuvers. And then he was like this off the wall, eccentric, like made me think completely differently, more like EQ coaching instead of IQ. And I started coaching with him, and then I found what my problem was the entire time, which was the way that I handled things, like my lack of boundaries and like having trouble like disappointing and constantly trying to fix everybody's problems, like things that I can talk about now openly, but in the moment, I was like, so you mean to tell me I feel like this because I'm just trying to help everybody with their problems? Like, what do you mean? But it was really taking over my life, and I didn't really see it until he brought attention to it.
Mm-hmm. And that was a huge awakening for you to really start working on your mindset?
My mindset, definitely, and just my boundaries and my personal growth inside of things that I had never experienced before. That's really when the awakening happened, was after I had the kids, after I opened up the business, after I kind of exposed myself. And you're very vulnerable in every state that I just mentioned. To be a parent is vulnerability at its max. To be with a partner where you're like sharing living space, and that's like, you're very vulnerable with that person. To have a best friend that's living with you that sees you in your vulnerable space is even more vulnerable. So all the vulnerability that was being like poured out, that's when I found Brene Brown, and I love her so much. Like, I started listening to her books and her audios, and like not having a ton of time forced me to maximize my time. And that's really when I started to get real with, okay, it's not this anymore, it's this. Like, up here is kind of what I need to focus on. So that's when my journey kind of began when it comes to my mindset. And like I said earlier, you don't know until you know. Like, you really don't know until you can kind of get some leverage and distance. Then you can see it for what the fuck it really is. And when I got a little bit of distance, I was like, oh man, a lot of things are gonna have to change, because the reason why I feel the way I feel is nobody else's fault but my own. It's because I've allowed myself to become this person for everyone around me without really expecting them to show up for just them. I had a crazy high expectation of like what people should be doing, or, well, God, I mean, I helped you do this. Why can't you at least do this? And I started this like inner judgment talk in my head of like, well, if I'm going to help you do this, like, clearly you can do that, but everybody's
special
wired.
Relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a quid pro quo, like tit for tat. Like, I do this for you, and I'm going to expect this from you, but I'm not going to tell you I expect this from you, so you're going to let me down no matter what you do.
But that inner monologue, like, it's not like I was saying that either. It was just this quiet kind of noise in the back of my head where somebody would do something and I'm like, why the fuck would you do it like that? Like, it's so much easier to just do this. You know what? I'll just do it. Because I didn't have a ton of time. So the patience that I had years ago, and it was just me swinging around, cool. But now it's like, I need for it to be efficient. I need for it to be this way. I got like into my flow, but then my flow is my flow, and nobody else has the same flow, no matter who you are. If you're best friends, if you date, if you're lovers, like, you're still you and I'm still me. So that was really what the big problem was that expectation. And I needed to not just pull back, but just manage my expectation by putting up boundaries. But they were soft. They were not supposed to be these big, hard, like, I'm not going to do anything for you at all anymore. Like, you don't want it to be like slams on brakes. I just would overextend myself into other people's lives because I cared about them. It was coming from a good place, but it just wasn't executed properly.
It was coming from love, executed in a place of hate.
I never heard that before.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I never heard that. I never even
processed it. Yeah. Yeah, I think you kind of have to start to look at the person in the mirror and really start to dissect yourself and fix that before you can fix anybody else.
Which is what I started to do, and that's why my 2018 kind of exploded, because the more I started working, I stopped expecting things, or slowly was starting to stop expecting things from other people, except for like my pillars, my values. Like, I need you to have integrity. If you don't have that, then my boundary says that I can't really have you as close in my life as I did before, because I just don't respect this part about you. Or instead of wanting you to do these things, if you don't naturally do them, then I'm actually going to have to be okay with you not doing that. Am I okay with remaining in the space with you no matter who you are or what you were?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is that going to bring me joy? Is that going to make me happy? Is that going to make me feel good? And I really started to put a magnifying glass on everything. And then, you know, fast forward 6 months in, you start to piss a lot of people off when you start to put some quiet boundaries around, like, you know, you're protecting your energy and protecting yourself, because you see the aftermath of like what happened when you didn't.
Right.
Everybody else around you kind of is one way, and they expect certain things, and their level of happiness is their own, but you're so invested. They might not know that you're that invested. So then when you start to take back some of your investment,
They want the old Candice back.
they want the old Candice back. And she was not, if I was the old Candice for years to come, I would have either burnt out, my salon would be failing, like I would be a terrible mom, I'd be barking at them, like I just couldn't, there was only so much of me to give, and I could tell, I'm like, this is not sustainable, like
Right.
I need to fix it.
And then they resent you for it when you don't show up in the way that they expected you
Because you train them
to
by your
expect
actions
that. Yeah.
to expect that.
Yeah. What was the first thing that you shined the magnifying glass on?
My business definitely at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you shine the magnifying glass on everything.
Everything. I felt like I had a new set of eyes. Like I looked at myself in the mirror, and it was hard, and there was a lot of tears, and I'm like, oh God, I've just created this maze for myself of all these things. And some ways I really love it, but in other ways I kind of despise it. And I started to shine that magnifying glass on everything. Even though it looked pretty and shiny on the outside, I'm like, let me just go a little bit below the surface here. And I started talking. I was very open about it. It wasn't like a quiet move. I'm like, okay, so I'm just kind of assessing just to like see where everything is at. And I would have conversations, but they felt like, I would assume for the people that were around me at the time, they felt like they came out of nowhere. Because it's like there wasn't really a problem, because it did look so good from the outside, that it's like, well, why are you digging around and poking around in here? Like, it's fine. Like, why do you want to change things? I remember doing that with my studio. And I flew to California one of the several times that I was invited back to come for like a business boot camp with Danielle's husband, Garrett, who does not do hair. He owns this amazing, like, multi-million-dollar coaching, training, God, I don't even know what to call it, like, life program, but it's only for men.
Yeah, married men.
Only for married men. And that just happened to be her husband. So, of course, he's talking to us like we are, like, some soldiers. Like, I'm in there getting business coaching from him. He's used to talking to, like, these big-ass dudes. He's got them on the beach, like, running around.
What's it called? The Warrior?
Wake Up Warrior.
Wake Up Warrior, yeah.
So we were, like, unofficial/official warriors.
Yeah.
And I remember him
and
looking.
He does, like, Navy SEAL training. Like you
yes. But we were, like,
jump in the ocean.
Yes.
You're, like, crawling on the beach. Waves are crashing into you.
Yeah, and you know, the way my hair is set up, I'm like, well, Garrett, I can't go in the water because, you know, my shit's going to get frizzy. So let's just sit right here and just dissect my business.
Can I just play around in the dry sand?
Yeah. Whenever I'm in Laguna, they know I'm like, they're like, oh God, Candice and these fucking curls, she can't get wet. I'm like, I can't get wet. So he had us in this room. There was 4 of us that he invited back for like business analysis, like training, like a gut-wrenching look at your business. Everything's on a whiteboard. We're poking holes in everything. It was the most expensive training that I've ever paid for in my entire life for 2 days. It was $5,000. And I was like, this is the opportunity of a lifetime, because I feel like something's off in my business, but I just can't tell what it is. And I remember sitting in that room, and he was going through all of the things, and the moment that sticks out to me like no other, we had already spent like a full day, and I was like, oh man, that's so much. Like, he had me write down everybody's name in the business, what their role was, you know, how they were paid. And you're, again, very vulnerable because there's 3 other people in that room with you that are doing the same exact thing for their business. And then the second day, when we're kind of starting to wrap up, he's training a girl beside me, and I'm just kind of listening. And they're very big advocates of, you listen to someone else's coaching because you never know, something inside of their coaching can help you. And she was comparing herself to my business, and my business was at the time the most developed in the room. But we were, again, traditional, so I was doing a lot of different things, jack of all trades, including extensions. And she was like, well, you know, Candice already has this set up, and, you know, I'm just trying to set mine up. My numbers are not like this or that. And he was like, you know what, you have such a big advantage over Candice. I mean, no offense, Candice, no shade, but like, Candice has a cornucopia. And I remember sitting there, and I'm like, what the fuck is a cornucopia? Like, what actually the fuck is that? And I didn't say anything because I was just listening. And then I got back to the room, and I was like, what did he call me again? And I had to revisit it. And I'm like, where's my note? And I wrote it down. And then I Googled cornucopia. And you know what a cornucopia is?
Give it to me.
It's this big basket of shit, like, that's in the center of a table that's got like figs and horns, and it's all the things. And I was like, fuck him, he called my business a cornucopia. And when I talked to him again, I was like, I'm gonna fix this cornucopia problem. He's like, well, what are you gonna do? I'm like, I don't wanna be a cornucopia. He was like, I don't even remember calling you that. Like, did I call your business that? I was like, I don't know if you called me that or my business, but we took offense no matter who it was towards. And that's the moment, that truly is the moment. It wasn't with him coaching me directly one-on-one. It was when he kind of threw that out there to my business while he was coaching the girl beside me. And I started brainstorming with him in the very last part of the class, like when we were wrapping up, like what it would look like to not be a cornucopia. And he was like, well, what would it look like? What would you focus on? I'm like, I am so passionate about something in my business that I only do like 25 or 30% of the time. I would want to do that all the time. He's like, well, why don't you? I'm like, well, that, I don't even know like how, I think my business would almost fail if I would have to get rid of all the clients that we built up. Like, I don't even know if my staff would want to do that all the time. Like, they might leave because I don't know, like I think that'd be a huge risk. He's like, is it worth the risk? And that's how we left it. I'm like, I don't know, I hadn't even thought about it. And so there's a long flight back, 7 hours from LAX or John Wayne all the way to RDU. And on that flight, I mean, I almost blacked out. I was writing so much. I was like, I looked up and I was like, we're landing? And it was like a red-eye flight. Like, I flew overnight, didn't sleep, had my little light on, like just going through it, killing my iPad notes. And when I got back, when I landed, I think I called Nico, who's my lead stylist now, and was like, blah, 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 like diarrhea of the mouth. And she's like, oh, I don't know, like, what, I don't know. Like, I think I just scared the fuck out of her. But that moment, that training, and that cornucopia comment is really what, like, and it flipped the switch, and I saw something completely different. I'm like, if this works, I'll get to do exactly what I love all the time. It brings me so much joy. It's a great financial move if this works. If it doesn't work, my business is going to be in shambles. And I just risked it. I had a meeting with every person on my team, and I was like, hey, I just want to let you know the direction of the business is going to be changing. This is the last year we're going to be offering this. They were pissed. They were like, what the fuck? Like, you didn't tell me this was happening. Like, I don't know if I would have come here. Like, I mean, pissed it off. Pissed everyone off. Gave them ample time, because I found out about this in like March, but I had plans to like go throughout the rest of the year and take the rest of the year to transition. So we're talking about like 9 months. Mm-hmm. But it was really challenging. They were really, really thrown off. They loved working at the studio. They didn't want to just do extensions. They're like, what's going to happen with my clients? I'm like, well, slowly we're going to have to start to wean those clients away, which means that we're going to be sending them to different salons. And to them, in their mind at the time, they were like, it just took me 3 years to build up this clientele. You want me to get rid of them in the hopes that we will have extension clients that we don't have yet? And I'm like, but they're out there. And they're like, bitch, what the fuck?
Yeah. This comes with your motto.
Yeah.
Go ahead, give it to us.
I thought you were going to say it.
No, I want you to.
If you're scared to do it, just do it fucking scared. Just do it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't hesitate on it. Don't say, well, I'm so fearful of it, I'm just going to wait. The fear is still going to be there, and you could be missing out on a tremendous fucking opportunity to impact every fucking person in your whole entire life, people that you haven't even met yet. Just do it. If it fails, it makes you more resilient to try to pick up the pieces. And it's almost easy to say that once something has worked. You're like, well, just do it. Just what's the worst that can happen? But in my scenario, in my situation, I was the breadwinner in my home. Dustin at the time had like just graduated from college, like maybe 18 months before, two years before, and was doing great for himself. But like, I was still at that time the household like holder downer. So if my shit didn't work, like we're talking about maybe not being able to live in our home. My best friend was depending on me. We were her employer at the time. She was in school. My 2 kids, all the people on my staff, like every single person on my team. So to risk all of that, it's different when it's just you. And you're like, well, shit, if it doesn't work, I'll eat ramen noodles. I'm good. But if it doesn't work and it affects somebody else's life, that's why I wanted to give everybody an out. Like, that's why I took them all out. And I was like, hey, I will rip up your non-compete, because we have non-competes at the studio. I'm like, there will be no hard feelings. I know I'm the one that's changing this, but like for me to become who I know I'm supposed to be, I have to do this. I have to. Like, I have no choice. I have to do this. There's a calling, and this is what I'm supposed to do with my life.
Yeah.
And when you come that strong with something, it's not something that happens every day. So I think they saw it, and they were like, okay, well, I'm out. Everybody left, but one person and my assistant at the time. So I had like a stylist that was like the baby stylist of the salon. She stayed. And then my assistant that I had just hired from hair school stayed. But everyone else left. So I kind of started over with that. And that was really tough, but it fucking worked. When you are in alignment with what you're supposed to be doing, I think the universe just opens up opportunities for you in such a dynamic way that you look at it like, damn, I didn't even really have to work as hard for things to happen in this lane with this new trajectory as I did to make shit happen before, because I wasn't in alignment. But I didn't know I was out of alignment because, again, looked good, felt good, seemed okay. Why would I tear it all apart? I just built it up. The first 5 years in business are really hard. So at year 3, when you're banking and things look good, why would you tear it apart?
Yeah. And so you were doing a whole nother transition, so similar to like the one you did prior when you were new boyfriend, pregnant, new business. Now you're doing a whole other, like, almost like a cleansing of your life, new business. I think shortly after you and Dustin separated, right?
Mm-hmm. We separated. That's when people started to look at me kind of like, are you okay? I was flipping my shit in my business. Dustin and I had decided, it wasn't even really like a decision. Again, I was putting a magnifying glass on everything and just kind of looking at it, and I just had to get real with myself about like just where we were, what it looked like, what some of my like values and pillars were inside of that space. And I just knew I needed space. I was like, I need space. I need space. I need space. I need space. So he gave me my space. And again, like that's when people, like the outside looking in, like that's when the chatter started about like, I think Candice is having a mental breakdown. She's changing everything. She left Dustin, you know, there was no problem. It's not like anything crazy happened. Like she just left. Like it was one of those things where even my family, like me and my mom are super close, and she was like, honey, are you good? Like, is everything okay? Like, not is everything okay, but like, I love you, I'm your mom, is everything okay? Is different than like somebody being like, you okay?
Mm-hmm.
So I just told her, I was like, I feel like I need to completely rearrange my values and like how my life is set up, because I want to be around killing it for a long time, and the way that it's set up now is okay, and I can kind of like,
it's gonna kill you.
It's gonna kill me.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna kill me. I say yes way too much. I don't mean it. I have no boundaries. I feel like I'm in this weird space, and I think I needed space from all of that. And that's kind of where my 2018 started to just unravel, but in a very, I don't want to say beautiful, because it wasn't. It was very chaotic, and it was very stressful and thought consuming and anxiety driving, but I just kept on, let me phrase this correctly. I kept on wanting to feel a certain way, and I just kept chasing a feeling, and that's scary because it's a fucking feeling. You don't know if you're going to feel it when you get to where you're going.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like it happened overnight. This was over the course of like a year. Every single time I made like a big bold change that was really fucking scary and really fucking risky, I felt like I could breathe a little bit more, and I was like, oh my God, I feel so light. Fuck, that was the right decision. Even before it unfolded, the feeling I had was being able to take like a deeper breath.
Yeah.
So after a year of that, I looked behind me and I was like, fuck, everything is so different. And I had a much smaller circle. I was single by choice. I had less people on my team by choice. I had way less clients in the studio by choice. I had made all these decisions that really like shrank everything down. And then I felt like I had a good foundation, a good core. I was very happy with where I was, even though from the outside looking in, it wasn't shiny anymore. It wasn't beautiful anymore. It was kind of chaotic and scary looking, but it felt better. And I was like, what a crazy ass way to feel. Like, I feel like, I don't know, what's the name of the song? We were just playing it in the salon. Alanis Morissette. Jagged Little Pill.
Yeah.
I remember a lyric. She was like, as the plane crashed down, she was like, I can't remember what the name of the song is or what the lyric is, but like when all this shit was happening around you, you look and you're like, perfect. But like shit is smoldering, something's on fire over there, and you just feel way better in that than you did when everything was like from before.
Yeah, what about personally? Did you have a lot of friends that you had to cut off that weren't serving you in the way that you needed them to? Or
not a lot, but very big key instrumental players. Like the people that were the closest to me. Like I started to look and see that we had a codependent relationship, and a lot of the codependency was from me to them. And I didn't want to have that. So then when I started to remove that aspect of our friendship, where it wasn't like a codependent situation anymore, it started to like raise red flags and like get kicked back and bite back. So I wouldn't say a lot of people, but definitely the people that it did affect, it affected in a way where it severed things very like instantly.
Yeah.
When you pull something away that somebody's used to having from you for a long, long time, whether it's rightfully so or if you're an asshole and you're just doing it out of spite, you're still taking it away. And mine was more out of like a quest for that feeling. So it wasn't intentional. Like I'm not like, I'm going to do this to you to make it hurt. It was, I think I need to do this for myself to make me not hurt. So once that started to happen, then yes, it definitely affected personal, professional, and like my mental state inside of 2018, which is kind of where we started with this whole conversation of that's what I was thinking of when I was on the plane, when I was flying to California for that first training inside of my now new position in life. I'm one of the trainers, one of 3 in the US for NBR and DKW and BMS. So DKW is Danielle K. White. NBR is Natural Beaded Row Extensions. She's the founder of the extensions that I do all the time, that I wear, that I love. And then BMS used to be Big Money Stylists, but we've changed it to business marketing and like strategy and sales. And I'm one of their trainers now, and I train other artists inside of all the things that they poured into me. And that was their very first train the trainer with us, was just setting us up for what it was going to look like to be inside of their organization.
Mm-hmm. Now, so Candice, present day, it's pretty much been a full year of Garnish Extension Studio, not Garnish Hair Salon.
Mm-hmm.
You hit that $1 million mark with doing extensions.
In our transitional year.
In your transitional year, which is crazy. You are happier than ever.
So fulfilled, man.
You have an amazing relationship with the father of your children, Dustin.
Yeah, we got to a really good space inside of our co-parenting relationship. It took a second.
Yeah.
It was bumpy at first, rightfully so. But yeah, we have a love for each other and a love for our kids. And we just want our kids to be happy humans, like high-functioning, amazing people.
Yeah.
And we both have that in common, so we kind of put all the shit aside. And then we're very much so in a very good space with one another.
And then you're changing bitches' lives, as I like to say it.
You say bitches, my term of endearment is hoe, so all the hoes.
Yeah. You're changing women's lives that could be going through something that's traumatic, that could be depressing, body dysmorphia, all the things. Mm-hmm. Just a little bit of hair can help. And then I think also you're having fun. You're taking time for yourself to like not work all the time or not have to do all the things.
Yeah.
And the start of that, I think, was the Raleigh Raw block party, where you like really looked at. It was the first time you had taken like a Saturday off, and for the hairstylist out there, like Saturday's the day.
Saturday's the day.
And you took it off and just did whatever you wanted that day, and that started you on this path of like not only stepping into your purpose, but your true self, of being able to enjoy the fruits of your labor that you've worked so hard for, to get to the top of this mountain and like look out and look at all the things that you've accomplished, instead of just keeping the blinders on and trying to push through and break through the next wall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that I told you before when we went to dinner that you were the catalyst for that. You running back into you out of nowhere made me look up. And I was like, oh, that's Patrick Moen. Cool. And then you were the one who invited me to the Raleigh Raw block party because you were new in town. You were looking to like mingle and see who's out there and to just get familiar with Raleigh. And of course, like this time last year, like we did everything together all the time. So you were like, come on. I'm like, but I have to work. You're like, I mean, do you? I'm like, yes, I have to work. You were like, okay. And you just kind of like tossed it out there. But again, you planted a seed. You didn't even know you planted a seed. You were like, well, I'm going to the party. I'm not doing shit on that Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
But I really wanted to go. I'm like, no, I really do want to go. Like, they have it once a year. Let me see if I can change some things around on my schedule. I never do this unless it's for like work travel. I was like, I think I'm going to do it. I had 2 people. I called them, offered them sooner appointments. So instead of doing them on Saturday, I think I stayed late on like a Thursday, and then I came in early on a Friday. And they were both elated. They were like, yes. So then it freed up my Saturday, and I went and rah-rah. I had lived here my whole life, basically, my whole adult life, and had only gone into Raleigh-Raw like maybe once or twice to get something. I didn't know there was a whole like culture and movement. I'm like, oh, the Poke Bowl place with the raw? Yeah, that's dope. I like that spot.
Yeah, they have a block party?
Yeah, they have a block party? So then when you invited me, I got to see everything. Like, it was just so cool to be off that day with you in that environment. And like, we were meeting all these people together, and there was like a psychic there, and she was like reading both of our things. And
tarot cards.
Yeah, tarot cards. You had the king, I had the queen. I was like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, just so many things happened in that day. And I'm a wino, so they had like some special elixir that was like healthy but also wine. I was like, I love this place.
Yeah. You ended up bumping into people that you haven't seen in years too.
They're like, what are you doing here? I'm like, I'm off today to see you here. Tell everybody you saw me.
Yeah. And
I just had such a fun time that day that I came home and I was almost on like an adrenaline high of like, why do I feel like this? This feels so good. And I think that's what started my summer with you, having all these little like escapades all over Raleigh. Like, here you are just moving back to Raleigh. I've been here for years, and you're introducing me to paddle boarding and block parties and like zip lining, and I came up with that one, but like
concerts,
like you drug me to every concert. I'm at like a country concert with your family and your sister, and I have on cowboy boots and I'm hitting a hee-haw. I'm like, this is fucking great. Because it was just so new.
Yeah.
Everything was so new. I felt like it was right underneath my nose, and I became almost like addicted to the fun and addicted to like looking up, because for a long time it was just trying to make it the fuck through. And I think that's kind of where you played a huge part, still do, but like last year was so different that like I really felt like there was a power and a presence in looking up and removing myself from the thoughts of like business and change and growth, and to have that like streak of, nah bitch, put that down, come on, let go. That was really life-changing. I felt like it made me more balanced. It made me appreciate the time at work, and then it made me appreciate not doing things that were work-related. That made me, it was very powerful last year with all the things that your presence kind of brought into that space. Mm-hmm. That now I still find myself looking for ways to have that, because it's necessary for me now. I can't get trapped in the tunnel of looking down, because the sun is shining. It's a beautiful day. The wind is blowing. Like, there's experiences out there that I need to have. I'm taking my mom to Spain this year to go to an Alicia Keys concert in Barcelona. The fuck? Like, I was looking at her tour dates and I was like, I want to do something nice for my mom. And she loves Alicia Keys. And I was like, let me see where she's like playing. I was like, oh, New York, LA, maybe we can go to LA. Then I saw her like UK tour dates, and I was like, I wonder where she's going in the UK. I've always wanted to go to the UK. I had a trip years ago that was canceled, and I saw Spain and London, and I was like, bet. And that's something I would have never done. Never. That's going to take me out of the salon for too long. You know, who's going to watch the kit? Like, how can I put this together? Like, my team is going to need me. But because I've set it up in a way where I can remove myself for bits of time, like that was where my 2019 came into play. I knew my 2020 was going to have me traveling more and educating and doing those things. So I think that I just unknowingly set myself up to have more space to put things in. Mm-hmm. And I just feel so grateful. Like, just grateful is not even the word, just super inspired by my own fucking self.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice,
it's
isn't it?
It's a good feeling, and I just want to keep on doing the things that make me feel like that. I don't feel like I'm chasing a feeling anymore. I feel like I'm just maintaining it, which is such a good feeling to know that all those hard ass things were for this moment where I feel like I do. Every day I pop out of bed. Every fucking day I have a whole morning routine that you know about, and a nightly routine, and like, I'm not perfect by any means. I miss shit and probably have too many glasses of wine when I'm supposed to be on my fitness journey, but like, every day I feel good with all the stressors of business and some of the things that come and challenges with like co-parenting, and it doesn't matter what gets thrown at me. It's hitting a foundation of fulfillment and purpose, and I'm able to practice my passion, and I bought my dream home last year and had this big ass mirror delivered today that I love, that I'm looking at. Like, this is, I look at this place and I'm like, this is my life. Like, what the fuck? And it just makes me think, what would have happened if I didn't choose to just do it scared when it looks like bleak, and you're like, am I making the right decision? Like, oh my God, from the very beginning.
Yeah.
From having Kingston to having Houston right after, to taking all my life savings out of the bank, like $41,000 I just took out. That's all I had to my name inside of my IRA account with all the tax penalties. They're like, you know, if you take all this out, I'm like, but I have a really big dream. They're like, bitch, you're gonna have a really big tax problem next year. But I just kept on doing shit that maybe didn't make sense, but to me it did make sense. But I look and see like all the things inside of my equation that I was able to pour into, and I have great people around me that help me, and I love coaching, and I think that was the big key, is like not just doing things off of the way it feels, but having a strategic plan in place along with making sure that you're open to the feeling, and then merging those two things together and balancing where you are now and your reality into, okay, how does this feel? Let me do a self check-in. How does this feel? Like, what's my gut telling me to do? Okay, let me check in with that.
Do you think back to what if you didn't do anything? What you would be like?
Often.
What's that picture look like?
I don't have like a sketch of it in my brain. I just feel like the feeling is what stands out the most.
What's it feel like?
Heavy, burdened. Heavy, burdened, but happy, I guess, knowing that I didn't know that I was inside of a box. So if you're inside of your own little space, you don't really know there's any space outside of them. But once you know, it's like learning how to read. When you look at letters on a page in groups that are words, you're like, what is this when you're 4? You know, I'm teaching Houston. Dustin and I are working on like letters with her. She can't see it. She's like, cat? I'm like, that says goat. But once she learns how to read, just like you and me, you can't look at the word goat and not say, oh, that's goat. You can't turn it off to go backwards to think that's just jarble on a page. That's kind of how I feel with my life. I know there was a time that I didn't know how to read the letters on the page, but I felt like I was. But it's so expanded now, and it's so different now, that I think I can just really resonate with how I felt back then, and I can't at all picture still feeling like that, 2 or 3 years later. Yeah. I think something would have had to give. I would have expired, like in some way, shape, or form, instead of being on fire. Yeah.
And so this year you've kind of started to do what was the preparation of 2019. So you've already had 2 classes come to your studio, in which you're the lead trainer of 15, it's about 15 girls?
Well, my lead trainer is in the building. Her name is Ani, and then she is one of the ones who trained me. So I am the trainer inside of my own space, and I have people from all over the country and open to the world, because we had somebody from Canada and the UK that fly in, and I'm kind of like the East Coast trainer, because there's myself, there's 2 trainers that are in Texas, and then there's the original OG, which is in Laguna, So I feel like anybody who is close in proximity that might not be able to or want to fly all the way across the country now has a space and a hub inside of Raleigh, North Carolina. And we're kind of central in, like, you know, Maine and New York and all that up there, then Florida, like North Carolina. Oh God, North Carolina is like right in the middle. So yeah, it's very empowering to know that all of that happened. I wouldn't be able to do that. Like, the more you touch something, the more you do it every single day, you become really proficient at doing it. So doing extensions a couple times a week for years is very different than all day, every day, problem solving, coasting through things, like working through issues and problems. Like, I know them in my sleep. I think about them when I'm not there. Troubleshooting things, like knowing it so well that I can actually train someone else on it. That would not have happened. That platform would not have been there if I didn't choose to go for it. Because I think in order to teach someone something, you have to know it inside and out to stand up as a trainer. The teacher learns the most. The more I train, when people ask me something, they're like, well, why do you do it that way? I'm like, why do I do it that way? It makes you stop and think, which just heightens your experience inside of whatever you're training. So all of it kind of has a trickle effect of kind of what I was preparing for unknowingly a couple of years ago.
So what's next?
Well, I'm going to Barcelona in July to go see Alicia with my mama.
Fun.
I have a girls trip planned with some of my homies for my birthday in June. And from now until then, training, teaching, working with incredible women that want to come in and have their lives changed with the art of extensions and all the things. Yeah,
your YouTube channel's crushing it.
Thank you.
Yeah, Garnish Your Growth.
Yeah, me and my lead, Nico, who came along with me in the journey, like every time I looked back for any amount of time, I'm like, okay, let me make sure I got, you good? She's like, got it. Like, she's been around for years, and the more I changed, the more that she kind of got inspired and was changing. So I decided to start a YouTube channel about just growth in general for the creative mind. And you don't have to be a hairstylist, but just growth-seeking individuals. That kind of ignition that happened when I started to think about things differently, I saw that my superpower was vision. I'm like, damn, if I can see it, I'm the bitch that will, I can see it, got it. I'll come up with the rules as I go. So hoping that this channel, and we've been doing this now for like 5 months. We have, I don't know, like 15 episodes or something like that. We usually drop one once a week. It's usually on Sundays. But we have topics like uncomfortable conversations, what to do around those. Showing up like single in the city, like what does that look like? It just things that people might not generally talk about. Her and I talk about openly and very candidly, kind of like with this podcast, just no shame. Like, if it happened for a reason. We're going to talk about it. You might feel a certain way about it, but it still happened and it changed the course of what you were doing. So that's gone really well. And my blog is something a little different, but it's just things about my life. CandiceMotley.com. Just what I'm doing. Some has to do with hair. Some has to do about momming. Some has to do with just being a daughter, a friend, like just all things me. So keeping very busy, but all of it is kind of centered around just growth.
Yeah, I love it.
Thank you.
I don't know, I think we did it.
I think we did it.
Yeah, how do you feel?
I feel good. It feels different. It feels nostalgic, but different to like think back to things that just happened a couple of years ago, but it feels like it happened in 1973. Like, I'm like, when did I have Kingston? Fuck, he's only 6. All this happened within the last 6 years.
It gets you excited to think back, because sometimes you don't really sit and revel in the accomplishments. You're looking towards, like, what's the next hill that I need to overcome.
Me and you are very similar in that respect, where you'll listen to something that I'm doing, and you're like, that's fucking amazing. I'm like, yeah, but I see a challenge that might come up with it, and sometimes I have to dig in your ass and be like, Patrick, what the fuck? This is fucking insane. Like, do you know how crazy this is? And you're like, yeah, but I just, I think that's just a growth mindset challenge where you're happy, but you're still burrowing through. So it's cool to sit here on the couch in my comfies and just like think about all the things that have transpired and like how this couch even got in this house.
Yeah.
For me to even sit on this bitch and have this conversation.
Well, it's incredibly inspiring, and I think you are incredibly inspiring, and I think you really started to flourish when you stepped more into your purpose, into what you're supposed to be doing. You really did it so strongly, and it's just so empowering to see, not only just as a human, but also as a woman.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me share all my stories and all my things.
You're welcome.
You know I like to talk.
You really do. I've asked you a bunch of questions. I mean, outside of the podcast form, you love to talk.
I love to fucking talk.
Where can everybody find you at?
On Instagram, I am MOT Garnish Studio. My personal blog is CandiceMotley.com. If you are thinking, man, I might need some extensions in this head, that comes directly from Reese, extensions. It's garnish-studio.com. And I think that's about it. I think YouTube. YouTube is Garnish Your Growth.
Yeah.
So those are all the platforms.
Yeah, and your studio is in Raleigh. It's over by Crabtree Mall off Creedmoor. Mm-hmm. Well, if you made it this long, I appreciate you sticking around. What I'd like for you to do is go on iTunes, leave me a comment, leave me a 5-star rating, let me know what you think, let me know how you're enjoying the podcast, let me know the content. If you have any suggestions for anybody that you would like me to interview. With that being said, I appreciate you hanging around and listening, and thanks for tuning in to Just the Recording Podcast. Peace.
Peace. Are you going to tell everybody that Just a Recording came from a conversation that we